All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Digression from the Theme. I apologize if I do have to step away for a moment. I am on baby duty tonight with my son, so if he wakes up, I just have to step away and give him an applesauce, and then all will be well. So, we didn't do anything last week, and we've been trying to get my brother on, who wants to be on the podcast, to talk about some things with ChatGPT and I'm having trouble remembering the name of the AI art generator on Discord at the moment. Midjourney. But he also got interested in talking about politics with us when I was talking to him on the phone, because he's a little more left-leaning, and I think that would be fun. So that'll be coming up relatively soon. But for now, I thought we would have a creative discussion because I've been writing more recently. I had a little bit of writer's block, but I have some ideas that need fine-tuning, and I thought this would be a good forum to do it, because usually we just have these talks privately, and I always enjoy them, and they end up going on for a very long time, and I find them interesting. So, the one difficulty here is that, as far as you're concerned, you know a lot more about the story than anyone else would, being that it's in the same universe I've been writing for the last, 6 months. And I don't want to lay on just the sheer amount of stuff that I would have to explain to give a full context. But, I figure I'll just... A lot of it I don't think is necessary to the conversation at this point, but I'll just explain sort of the last step in getting from where I was to where I am, which is not another Dark Age, because, I tend to sort of reset the world with Dark Ages, but sort of the opposite. I undid one of the bigger decisions in the world, which was eliminating afterlives. So I had a character who sort of showed up and ended up figuring out the problem and trying to solve everything that was going on with these rifts, which, just to explain that really quickly, it's just think multiverse. It's a hole in reality that lets something different come in. That's the simplest way to put it. And those had been getting out of control. So this woman, Queen Astrid, figured out that there was a special kind of tree that if you plant it right where reality's breaking down, it will sort of close up the wound by adopting that other reality. And then it creates this sort of little bubble. And around it, it will change the environment. So the whole world sort of became these series of localized bubbles that have different rules. And that made it pretty easy to explain, like, racial diversity in the story with, like, fantasy races. It's, you have races that aren't adhering to the normal, Darwinian model of evolution. Now they're evolving for different reasons and with different problems and advantages. So that's a very basic baseline of where I was headed. And there was a question. So this question really doesn't require a ton of backstory. I mean, that's really all the backstory it requires, being that I'm trying to create a religion in the story. And I find creating religions really fun, and you're the best person to get advice about it from. Yeah, I mean, kinda. You sort of break out of the mold a little bit. But, so, some of these things are a little bit arbitrary, right? There's human error involved. So it's not like let me step back here. So admittedly, I like my lists of of things in fantasy. Like, you'll have a list of the different schools of magic, or the different types of like trait that characters can have. I was writing a story a while back that had way too many, but every one of the main characters had this like special thing. Like, they were like, one was super adaptable, so he was adaptation. One was intelligence. It's like stat points in a game. But when I was writing them before, they weren't arbitrary. They were like fundamental to the way the world worked. So, I had so many because I was trying to cover everything. I was like, within these 11 traits, I want to cover all consciousness. And it never worked out very well. It was overcrowded and overcomplicated. But here, I didn't do that. These are not fundamental laws of the universe. These are rules that Astrid came up with. Or not rules. They are principles that Astrid came up with in order to judge people. So, when she planted all these trees, she figured out that, oh, I can actually shepherd souls when people die to an afterlife. But it has to be done, so it's intentional. She became the arbiter of life and death. And that meant she needed a system of judging people. And to do that, she came up with however many virtues for this religion, which would determine, based on where you stood, where you would go. And this isn't like, it's not quite so simple as heaven or hell. There really is, there is a hell, but it's not utilized the same way. There's a very bad place you could go, but it's not like, oh, you stole some bread, you're going to hell. It's more like, oh, you were a lifelong thief, I'm going to put you in purgatory. That kind of feeling. So you just don't get a reward. You don't necessarily get a punishment. But, so I have 3 virtues, and I don't have like a number that I want to get to. But the first one, I just wanted something that was sort of a baseline. It's just like natural. And so I was like, okay, balance works. You have your highs and your lows, and that's just the natural world. So around the trees that she planted that embody balance, the world remains normal. Another one I was thinking was purity. And part of the thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to come up with these concepts and make most of them sort of corruptible. Sort of too much of a good thing becomes something bad. So with purity, it went from, oh, this is this sort of holy place, and it's all about light and sort of cleanliness. But if you take light too far, and you take the idea of purity too far and become really overzealous, it could involve scouring everything from that you deem as impure. So it went from, oh, this place is so nice and bright and everything, to, oh, this place is on fire. So it went from, the light of purity to what I have a working title I'm calling the Scouring Flame. And the second one is the third one is less developed, which is perseverance. And that one I haven't exactly corrupted. I made it so that people who live around the tree live longer if they are in bad circumstances. So if they're sickly or starving and they manage to survive, they sort of get more years on their life. They don't really age if they're surviving but in bad condition. So sort of the worse off you are, as long as you're staying alive, you'll add on to your ticker at the end. And I'm just going to have some sort of misunderstandings about the rule there, and it's going to corrupt the tree in a different way, but I wanted to put the idea out to you of these virtues I'm trying to think of, so that if you do think of one, you can pass it at me and help me figure this system out. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, like, I was. So I'm sort of thinking of it like a list in opposition to the seven deadly sins. Yeah. Well, not necessarily need to do, but sort of high value traits. Okay, so like, let me just draw a comparison here. You have the seven deadly sins are bad things. You can be a little bit proud, or you could just be, or a little bit gluttonous, or you could be an absolute horrible glutton. Um, right. And there might not be, but for me, I'm considering on my end, I'm considering there being gradations. So in this sense, it's like the maybe probably a lot of people in the story won't follow the whole thing to a T, right? You're probably not going to be the most persevering and the most pure and the most balanced and everything, but you would probably adapt yourself to one part of it and sort of become focused on that. You're supposed to adhere to all of them, but one would be sort of your thing. And so, like, it's not quite designed like Christianity. It's a weird mix between like pagan and and Christianity. Not pagan, polytheistic. So even though most people would consider the queen who made the religion the god of it, like she doesn't declare a god. She's really just about the afterlife aspect of it, and then becomes the arbiter. So people just start thinking of her that way. And I'm intentionally not going to use the word God in the story, but it's just an easy definitional term when I'm talking theory crafting. Deity? Okay, yeah. Yeah, she's something above. People are aware that she not only sort of repaired the world and stopped it from cracking apart the way it was, but she, and even more than that, she took like both. She sort of turned the whole world into a theocracy. She was Pope and Queen. But at some point it became too much to govern both laws and, sort of religious arbitership for ferrying all the souls. So she had a bunch of kids and she put them in charge of the different schools of thought. And the objective of the whole thing was to give people a moral compass, or a sort of a compass of virtue that would be like, if you keep to these rules, the more you keep to them, the better off you'll be, first of all. And secondly, it's how you're going to be judged when you eventually die. No, you're fine. There wasn't before. Before her. She returned the concept to the world. It is real in the universe. Yeah, and so essentially, as far as afterlives go in the story, it is a sort of pocket dimension. So it is a very real place, but for a long time before she came along, the world was sort of in a bubble. And so when you died, your soul just hung out. It couldn't go anywhere, it was trapped in. Yeah, the trees she planted are doors in it. And so when people die, if they go through the sort of sacrament, if they go through the funeral rites, then whatever tree they're buried near and whatever place they're judged to go, which would probably be the opposite order, right? You're judged, and then your body is brought to the tree. It would probably go in that order. The rules are still changeable, so. But well, it's in development, so I haven't made all the rules yet. But yes, yeah. Like I said, she's not exactly human anymore, so concepts like time are a little bit different for her. Haven't gotten there yet. Yes, she was born human. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm mixing the concepts of sci-fi and sort of the spiritual normal. Yeah. 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 And so in in general, one of the big things that I'm dealing with story wise is that so the queen has disappeared from the sort of mortal aspect of her life. She was still the ruling power in government for a very long time. We'll say centuries. And it's kind of hard to question that power directly, right? Because if she's not only ruling your government, but in charge of where you go when you die, it's kind of hard to, throw her off the throne there. Uh, so she's not explicitly dead, but something went wrong at some point, and I've left that mysterious, even sort of to myself at this point because I'm still writing it. But she has stopped directly talking to anyone outside of apparently her council who are delivering orders for her. And her children, in the time since she has disappeared, have gone on full revolt. They're I'll say she was a unique kind of person, and I think that's required that you be a unique kind of person to suffer immortality. Or agelessness. I'll draw that line there because I wouldn't say that she's unkillable, but she doesn't age. And so when she had a bunch of children and said, "Hey, you are going to be like the bishop of purity," essentially, and it's not that her kids didn't want the roles they got. It's actually probably more that they wanted them too much. And I have one. I've been developing one in specific, which is the purity one, because I already had that one sort of on lock, which is her oldest son was very into the whole purity thing. So when she put him in charge of the tree, he became obsessed with it. He built a castle in the tree's branches, and he lived up there and just basked in the light constantly. And all the while, he was sort of watching the ills of the world and being like, this stuff shouldn't exist. The world should be as pure as it is on the other side of this bridge. And then, being that he was made ageless, he realized, oh, I'm never going to get to go there. I'm going to sit here and be the steward of this impure place forever. And that didn't sound so good, so he sort of quietly harbored this hatred for the natural world, in that he wanted it to be pure and perfect. And so he took this rule that was supposed to be a virtue, and he, generally sort of bent it to where it was like, oh, well, what happens if I just bring through so much of this other place? If I widen the bridge and open the door and leave it open. And it poured through sort of so much light that it started burning away everything that the light touched. And that wasn't a problem for him. And when when the queen disappeared, he no longer had a warden watching him to make sure that he didn't just open the floodgates and try to burn everything down. So I want to go in that direction with most of the different trees and concepts, but since they're not all developed, Like, they don't all have to be, like, obsessed with it and turn evil or something. I mean, it could be that they actually have to actively fight to control it. With her gone, maybe too much is coming through on its own. But the thing that's in the story probably going to be a point of sort of confusion that's going to suggest that she's not dead is that souls are still being judged and moved. So I would say that she doesn't like preside over every body in person, right? That you don't literally bring the corpse of your dad to her and she's like, he goes to purity. It's not like that. Maybe there's a device, some kind of maybe compass, I don't know, that you do this right, you say a prayer, and then it points you in the right direction. And, 'cause I think that's more fair if she's sort of out of her own head, sort of being timeless and not interpreting time the way that you would normally. Because if you're judging all of the dead in the world, you're going to need more time. It's like Santa Claus. But, you know, maybe the fact that she's not present in sort of the mortal world anymore means that one of the trees has gotten out of control. The door is open a little too much, and stuff is flooding through that shouldn't be, but she's not controlling it anymore, so her kids are fighting to do it. Some of her kids. I mean, like, I had rough concepts for some of the other trees, very rough concepts, where I'm trying to adapt the earlier rules of the universe into this new rule set. Where, you know, I have other races. And one of the ideas was like, okay, maybe one of these afterlives is something for people who like structure. And maybe structure could be one of the things. But, like, one of the virtues. And as a concept, okay, you need structure in your life. But on a more literal sense, what if that afterlife was literally about things being geometric, about them being solid? And if that bled through, what if it's turning everything to metal? What if it is turning living things into metal to try to make them not only like geometric and smooth, but symmetrical and that kind of thing. So it's the concepts get more difficult. Purity's a relatively easy one to turn bad. Right. I mean, in this sense, where it's the character has sort of misdefined it in the end, where it was supposed to be a more loose rule that you're just supposed to be sort of morally good. That was the point. But the reality that is on the other side of this bridge is a much more direct interpretation, where it's, and arguably, right, it's probably not correct for the word purity, but it's the closest thing she had. And so you go to a place where it's light and you don't age, you don't die, and you are basking in everything being serene. So, So yeah, a lot of it's going to be about sort of the misinterpretation of a concept being mishandled and misused by people who don't like their lot at the moment and have the power to sort of destroy the status quo. And then on the underside of things, where, you know, you're not dealing with the super high up people, a lot of this is background stuff that you're not going to get told directly. But I like to build the world before I start really getting into it so that I know the rules. But, you know, I have, for perseverance, with that tree, it became a process of discovery instead of misunderstanding, where the very fact that the other world was bleeding through meant that persevering against terrible odds made you live longer. And so people tried to force that change. They tortured people in order to create longer living people. But in doing this, they sort of stained the land with blood and they end up turning the tree carnivorous. So the tree now craves blood in order to act as a bridge. So if you aren't feeding it people, you can no longer access this longer life. And so that's a problem that's not directly in the hands of the one who is in charge of it, but indirectly it is. He sort of inspired his followers to start torturing people to make them stronger. And then that led to the corruption. So like I said, the rules are a little bit looser. I'm not trying to create concepts that encompass all of goodness or all of reality. It is a little more arbitrary what the rules are. It was just a system of judgment developed by somebody who wanted to make the process of death better. So if you do think of any words that, or any concepts that you think would fall in line with that, you don't have to tell me right now. I mean, you don't gotta sit there and think about it. But if later you think of one, let me know. But, and sorry, go ahead. I was thinking 6 total. Oh, sorry. Apart from balance. Balance is sort of the anchor point, so it would be, so yeah, 7 total, including balance, which would be normal. Right. Yeah. Right. The same thing. Well, that was a half an hour that went by very fast. I did a lot of talking. But, was anything real world that is eating at you that you want to talk about? Yeah, of course. Yeah, maybe very sudden, a lot of rain. Yeah. 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 But they make a lot of money. Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Seriously. Yeah. And you have power failures in bad storms. Like with Buffalo. Recently Buffalo was so cold and so snowed under that people were losing power, cars were getting stuck in the streets. What happens if you don't have gas heat and no power? You're going to freeze to death in your house. And the first time that happens, if any of these policies go through in a big way, the first time there's a big ice storm and some thousands of people die in their homes because it's so damn cold, it's going to get turned right around. And that'll be a huge tragedy, a preventable one. And somehow they've tried, and they've also made it so you can't build a fireplace, a wood burning fireplace, in a home in New York, in a new property. You're not allowed to. Yep. Burn your magazines. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. Well, apparently the U.S. air traffic control is using like 40-year-old computers. Oh yeah, that's really sketchy, especially because it was from a misplaced corrupted file. That now sounds very intentional. That's like, really? You had somebody doing their job that badly, and your system is so fragile that one misplaced. You don't have a backup? You have to have a backup. Because if a surge strip went off and you don't have a backup, now your system's down. It doesn't make sense. It's a hack. Well, they don't want to cause a panic, right? You don't want people to know that somebody can hack our air traffic control and turn it off, because if they can turn it off, they can screw with it. And with very little direction. I don't think that's conspiratorial. I think at this point it's pretty well established that one, the government lies, two, the government hides things in order to keep up appearances and stop people from panicking, and that not only is technology advancing, but the sort of bad actors are just as good. I don't know why people question the fact that bad actors are going to be just as good at developing and modifying technology as everyone else. It's not like they're not people. They're not some vague concept. You can have as many bad people as you have good people, so numbers aren't on your side, and they can get in, reverse engineer anything. And, well, what happens if they take down the power grid? Most of it's automated, so what are we going to do? And yeah. Yeah. And that is the theme. Yeah. 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 Well, I think, and maybe this is too much, but I think that taxpayer dollars and in general the government should be should have like a transparency document on their spending. I know that's not going to happen. There is zero chance in hell that that's ever going to happen. But I think it's a lot easier and a lot better for sort of the morale of people paying taxes that are hitting you on the way in and the way out if you can see where they're going. Return a little bit of a sense of community to paying your dues to society, right? Because now it seems like you are paying you're getting hit everywhere with taxes. And you have no idea what percentage of it is going to things that you are ever going to see, use, or even be aware of. And it's probably a pretty low percentage that you're actually going to get return on, right? Like some minuscule bit you get back in Social Security, and then you'll see it in the road work and cops. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I do mean state too. Like if they were all transparent, it would be good. Oh yeah. I can at least here, right, in where I live, we can actually one see the results and we can ask. We can like ask our town councilman, and we have pretty good transparency about budgets and where they are and where they're not and where they need to be. And we I one of the things I really like about moving out here is I know a lot more about my community. Living in the city, I never knew anything. Granted, I wasn't exactly looking, but I think even if I was looking, in a lot of places, you are not going to find those answers. And yeah, it's a monster that lives on money salad. Yeah. I'm. They're tired of it. Yeah, and losing your faith in humanity is a great ticket to nihilism, and social media. Like the one time where I had an issue with my faith in humanity, it was at least from looking at like the deep web. I was I was looking at bad things to try to. This was for writing. I was trying to get in the headspace of someone very bad. But I think I came to you at like 7 in the morning after being up all night, and I was like, "Hey, I need some faith again." And yeah, 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 yeah. Right, but You need a palate cleanser. Yeah. Well, it's a negativity machine because people latch on to negative things, and yeah, like good vibes will get clicks, right? They'll get some clicks, but you tend to remember and spread things that are negative because you almost want to share the burden. But with the way social media works, you are not sharing the burden. You are cloning it, right? If I have bad news and I come to you in person and we sit down and we talk about it and we hash it out, it has been divided. We are each helping to deal with it. We're taking it together, and that's different. On social media, you have literally copied it, and now you have duplicated it, and then it doubles again and doubles again. And so negativity is replicated much easier than positivity because you're seeking that same sort of division of burden, but you're not achieving it. The positivity is also duplicated, but it's more of like a one-to-one. It's not exponential the way that positivity duplicates in real life, right? If you have two people having a conversation, right, it's better than talking to yourself, right? If you have four people, you can get a laugh bouncing. Yep, exactly. So, I well, I think your story was a good note to end on. Yeah, we just hit an hour. So, let's not dig back into the weeds here. So, thank you. Thank you for the story, and thank you to anybody who decided to listen through this. Today was a little all over the place, admittedly. It usually is, but we made a pretty clear jump in the middle and got into some weeds a little bit, but that's alright. That's what we do. So, I hope you all have a good night. We will try again next week to get my brother in, but if we can't, it'll just be us. So, everybody have a good evening, and God bless.